Imagine being stuck on a ship in the middle of the ocean for 8 months straight. No break, no shore, no end in sight. Now imagine doing that while missiles are flying, morale is collapsing, and nobody back home even knows your name. That is the reality for thousands of American sailors right now, and the people making the decisions, they are watching highlight reels. Stay with me, because what I am about to tell you is not being covered anywhere else. This is the full picture. Let me take you back to 1991, Desert Storm. America decided to go to war against Saddam Hussein in Iraq. What did the Pentagon do? They spent months, not days, not weeks, months preparing. Ships came in from across the planet. Supply chains were built from scratch. Aircraft, military and civilian both, were organized into massive logistics networks. Satellites were repositioned in space to support communications. Every single branch of the military worked together in perfect coordination. And even then, even with all that preparation, military commanders were nervous because they knew that war is unpredictable. Now fast forward to today. Reports suggest that the decision to strike Iran was made, and within just 45 days, the operation began. 45 days. For a country that has spent 30 years preparing for exactly this kind of conflict. Military experts with decades of experience are saying the same thing. 45 days was simply not enough. You cannot build a war machine in 45 days against an opponent who has been building their defense for 3 decades. And here is the deeper problem. After the Cold War ended, America got comfortable. The enemies America fought, Serbia, Libya, Iraq, Yemen, none of them could sustain a long war. None of them had the missile technology, the command structure, or the national will to fight back for months and years. So the military adapted. It became a short war machine. Powerful, yes, but built for quick victories, not long campaigns. Iran is not that kind of opponent, and that miscalculation is at the center of everything that has gone wrong. Now let me tell you about the USS. It's an Abraham Lincoln. This aircraft carrier, carrying approximately 5,000 sailors and Marines, has been deployed at sea since late November. Think about that. We are talking about 8 months at sea with no meaningful rotation. Even the Royal Navy in the age of wooden ships, hundreds of years ago, understood that sailors needed to come off a ship after 6 months. It was not kindness, it was military science. After 6 months, performance drops, judgment suffers, mental health collapses. What is happening on that ship right now? Reports are coming in that sailors are jumping overboard to escape. Not in combat, not under attack, just jumping, because the pressure has become unbearable. Now compare that to how Russia has managed its forces in Ukraine. Whatever you think about that conflict, the Russian military has been meticulous about rotating troops in and out. Fresh units replace exhausted ones. That is basic military management. America is not doing that. And when the people fighting your war have broken morale, you do not have a military force anymore. You have a humanitarian crisis wearing uniforms. One of the most dangerous miscalculations in this entire conflict happened in the very first 48 hours. When a country eliminates the leadership of its opponent early in a war, it usually expects chaos to follow. The assumption is, remove the head and the body falls apart. History says otherwise. Look at what happened in World War II on the Eastern Front. Stalin had executed tens of thousands of Soviet military officers before the German invasion. The Germans assumed this meant the Soviet military was weak and leaderless. What actually happened? The officers who rose to replace them were younger, hungrier, and more aggressive. They had new ideas. They adapted faster, and they eventually pushed the Germans all the way back to Berlin. The same pattern is repeating today. The leaders who were removed at the start of this conflict were in many cases the more pragmatic voices, the ones willing to negotiate. Who replaced them? Harder men. Men who see this war as a fight for their nation's very survival, yet because for them it is. And when your opponent believes they are fighting for survival, they do not quit. They do not negotiate from weakness. Every ceasefire in this conflict has broken down. Every pause has been followed by a new front opening somewhere else. That is not coincidence. That is a strategy. And it is working. There is one more piece to this puzzle. When a president goes to war, he relies on intelligence. He needs accurate information about the enemy's capabilities, their intentions, their weaknesses. In the lead up to this conflict, American intelligence agencies reportedly had serious doubts, low confidence in certain assessments, questions about the assumptions being made about how Iran would respond. Those doubts appear to have been set aside. The expectation was that this would be over in days, 2 weeks at the most. That is not what happened. And now, America finds itself like a chess player who moved too fast, deep into a game they underestimated, with pieces they cannot easily pull back. America went into this war with a short war military, a 45-day preparation window, exhausted sailors, and intelligence warnings that nobody listened to, and the enemy they are fighting has spent 30 years preparing for exactly this moment. In Part 2, I'm going to show you what comes next, the alliances that are forming against America right now, the military vulnerabilities that are being exposed, and the question that nobody in Washington wants to answer: is there actually a way out of this? Comment, Caro, do you think America made a mistake going into this war? What if I told you that the war America is fighting right now has not just failed militarily, it has pushed every major country in the Middle East away? What if the greatest damage done in this conflict is not on the battlefield, but in the boardrooms and capitals where alliances are made and broken? Because right now, something is happening that has not happened in decades. The entire geopolitical map of the Middle East is being redrawn, and America is on the wrong side of that redrawing. This is Part 2, and this is where it gets serious. For decades, America's power in the Middle East rested on relationships. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan. These were not just friends, they were force multipliers. They provided bases, intelligence, access, and regional legitimacy. Look at where those relationships stand today. Turkey, a NATO member, has publicly stated that it believes the intelligence used to justify certain decisions in this conflict was fabricated. That is not a small thing. That is a NATO ally openly contradicting American intelligence claims during an active conflict. The UAE, long considered one of America's most reliable partners in the Gulf, is now being called a traitor by voices across the Sunni Arab world because they are seen as too close to the American axis. The Arab street is turning against anyone who does not stand against this war. Saudi Arabia is watching all of this very carefully, and what they are seeing is an America that cannot win, cannot exit, and cannot protect its partners. Egypt is reportedly moving toward a new regional alignment, not against America officially, but away from America's orbit. What this means is simple. America is fighting a war, and losing the entire region at the same time. Now here is what should genuinely concern every person watching this. Strategists and geopolitical thinkers have warned for decades that there is one combination of powers that America cannot afford to face together: Russia, China, Iran. For most of modern history, these three countries had their own tensions, their own disputes, their own reasons not to fully cooperate. America's entire foreign policy was built around keeping them separated. That separation is ending. Russia and China have deepened their economic and military cooperation to levels not seen since the Cold War. Iran has moved closer to both, providing military technology, signing long-term agreements, and positioning itself as a critical node in an alternative global order. And around that core, a broader alignment is forming. Turkey is drifting. The Sunni Arab states are reconsidering. Even countries that were previously neutral are being pushed to choose sides, and many of them are not choosing America. This is not just about one war. This is about the structure of global power for the next 50 years. Sam Huntington wrote about this decades ago. He said that if Russia, China, and Iran ever found common cause, America's position on the Eurasian continent would be fundamentally challenged. That book was written decades ago. What he predicted is now happening in real time. Let me bring this back to the military situation. Kremspad, because the strategic picture and the battlefield picture are both telling the same story. In May and June of this year, the U.S. Army conducted war games in Germany with Ukrainian forces that have been fighting a real war for 4 years, forces that have learned tactics in the field, under fire, that no training exercise can teach. The result? The American forces were completely unprepared. They were annihilated in the simulations. Now, this does not mean the American military is weak. It means the American military has been optimized for a type of warfare that no longer dominates the modern battlefield. What does the modern battlefield look like? Think World War I, but with drones and precision missiles, trench systems, fortified positions, long attritional warfare, electronic warfare, drone swarms, precision strikes on supply lines and logistics. Iran has studied this. They have watched Ukraine carefully. They have developed asymmetric capabilities, missiles, drones, proxy forces, specifically designed to counter American naval and air power. The result is a situation where American military dominance, which has gone largely unchallenged for 30 years, is being tested in ways it has never been tested before. And the tests are not going well. So here is the question that sits at the center of all of this. Is there a way out? Every military conflict eventually ends. The question is always, Katsamin kon on what terms, at what cost, and with what consequences for the future? The problem right now is that the conditions for a genuine exit do not yet exist. The opponent believes they are winning, and by most measurable indicators, they are right. The alliances America needs to broker a solution are fracturing. The domestic political will to make a difficult compromise is not there. History gives us examples. Vietnam ended, but it took years of escalation, enormous casualties, and a fundamental shift in political will before the exit happened. The lesson that conflict taught was supposed to be permanent. Understand your enemy before you commit your forces. That lesson appears to have been forgotten. The gap between what is being communicated publicly about this conflict and what is actually happening is significant, and that gap tends to close eventually. When it closes, the political consequences tend to be severe. America went into this war underestimating its opponent. It is now losing its allies while fighting that opponent. Its military is showing cracks it was never supposed to show, and the global alignment forming against American policy right now may take a generation to undo. The most dangerous wars are not the ones you lose on the battlefield. They are the ones where you lose, and do not realize it until it is too late to change course. Comment, Caro. What do you think happens next? Does America find an exit, or does this escalate even further? Subscribe, Caro, because this story is far from over,